A Bulls thought weighing in, not surprisingly here. Amir says, for the Bulls to bury their end-of-season press conference on a night when the Warriors are going for an all-time record, an all-time NBA great played his last game, that was calculated, cowardly, and embarrassing. It's hard to take seriously any of the so-called claims for accountability when they actively try to hide. The content of the press conference was equally embarrassing, and it reminded me of the 2010 Bears press conference when they claimed they were going to implement massive change by maintaining their valued continuity. Instead of following that one, they should have found their inner Virginia McCaskey and followed the 2014 Bears press conference script of everything is bad and everyone is fired, but it didn't happen. My favorite quote was Paxson's comment that he's had only one bad year. 9 of the 13 seasons he's been the GM or president, the team either didn't make the playoffs or lost in the first round. I hope sometime soon Jerry Reinsdorf can borrow Virginia McCaskey's balls.
That's not going to happen.
No, I don't.
That's not going to happen. And that really was. Joe Cowley is going to join us at the top of that. But that's just a backdoor play. That's just really, come on. Are you kidding me?
Shocked.
Come on.
I was flabbergasted when I said.
I understand. You're right. You get the beat guys, and they know it better than anybody else. But that's not what you do. After this season, that's not what you do. That's not how you handle this. You backdoor it while the Warriors are playing and Kobe's dropping 60 on you and the Hawks are playing. Come on.
That's an all-time news dump is what that is.
Ridiculous.
We got to come out at some point and talk, so let's just do it right after the game. Everybody's here. We'll get it out of the way. It'll be fine. Boers and Bernstein, Joe Cowley, the guy who was firing questions at the Bulls Brain Trust last night, will join us at 2. You've got the score.
We are accountable for what this team did this year. And accountability, hold accountable. Accountability goes to everyone. Your accountability goes every which direction. Be held accountable. We did have a lot of significant injuries that hurt us. That's not an excuse. Given injuries, any first-year coach who was dealt a lot of the things he was dealt in terms of injuries, I never had those type of injuries with his injuries. I don't think the veteran roster was the problem. Fred was dealt with a lot of injuries. In terms of our injuries, a lot of difficult injuries to navigate through.
Thank you, everyone.
Here's some of the great highlights of the Bulls' backdoor press conference last night. You got Boers and Bernstein, Chicago Sports Radio, 6-7 The Score. Joe Cowley will join us in a few minutes, and we'll talk about all of it. But really, I mean, it was repetitive. And somebody had written, I don't know if it was Joe or somebody had written that what they're going to do is they were going to blame a lot of the injuries. Well, you heard it. They did. And I just think it's really beneath you to do what they did. I mean, even the Bears don't do that. Even the Bears don't do that.
I was shocked. I said, "Oh my God, they're really doing this right now."
Yep.
They're really doing this with all that's going on. Yep. The middle of the Blackhawks game, both local baseball teams, first place local baseball teams playing, and 2 massive, historic NBA stories drawing.
We'll never see either one of them again.
All of the national media and say, "Oh, here we go. Let's do this right damn now." And he sat there and answered every question. And the beat reporters did follow up on some stuff and tried to get info. But man,
it was like
everybody's safe. Gar's fine. Fred's fine.
Fred's fine. Gar's fine. Gar, you know what Fred did? He learned.
Okay.
He learned.
Well, Jimmy's not going to be here. So we talked about yesterday. I think they agree with me. What they're saying is that everybody's in play. Yeah. And that quote, the stuff about, do we have, Tanny, the line about talking about leadership? I know he invokes Michael Jordan in there, but listen very, very, it's obvious who Paxson's talking to when he talks about the difference between leading and talking about leading, actually being a leader, and instead saying, sort of cloaking yourself in the trappings of leadership and just aping this idea of being a team leader, that there's a big difference between that and really doing it.
I don't think any of our guys need to talk about that going forward, about leadership. I just think they need to show it.
And correctamundo.
Yeah, he invoked Michael Jordan in that regard. But
I read the quote.
But that's Jimmy. There was one guy on this team that was the self-appointed leader.
Self-appointed leader. Nobody said, and that's something that, right off the bat, that's wrong. So I mean, there was just so much wrong. I think there's a, despite whatever their content was, that's fine. Whatever their content was, I don't think it was going to change, no matter if there was more people there or not. But that's just such a low rent for that organization way to do it. What I mean, and they know it. I mean, and they readily did it, eagerly did it. On a historic night in the NBA, two things I don't know that you'll ever see again. I don't know you'll ever see anybody says win 73 games, nor do I know you'll ever see a guy in his last game score 60 points.
You won't.
I don't think you'll ever see that. So, I mean, and the Hawks were playing. So, I mean, to me, as an old newspaper guy, it's just frustrating. It's just like I would be mad if I were somewhere else doing something else, and then all of a sudden, oh, by the way, they're here tonight. They're what? Yeah, they're here tonight after the game. You're kidding me.
That means no columnists and no national media and very little television. It's all controlled through your partially team-owned outlet. And I'm realizing what's going on. I thought they're really doing this, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm just disappointed in them. I think they, at this point in time, whatever you want, look, if you want to say something, say it. That's fine. And he probably wouldn't have changed it if there had been 50 people there instead of what there was. He probably wouldn't have.
And a good point for the 847 is not only that, nobody could see it because it was on the third Comcast channel.
Yeah, I didn't know it was on.
An actively planned non-media event. Yeah, I ended up streaming it because I was watching. I had so much else going on that I ended up watching it online and just shaking my head. That Cowley moment says, "Well, Gar is safe." Well, why's that?
No, I didn't even know what was going on. I was sort of buried in other things at that time, and I didn't know what was going on. I don't pay attention. I just switch my channels as much as I can and try to find things that entertain me. And I did not know what was going on.
670 The Score.
And we've been talking about the Bulls backdoor press conference at 2:05 on Boers and Bernstein, and maybe we got a guy that can help us with all this.
You can follow him on Twitter at @SunTimes_hoops. You can hear him right now on the Home Run Inn Pizza hotline. Visit their pizzeria just blocks from the park in Wrigleyville. Joe Cowley of the Sun-Times. That was a thing last night, huh?
That was something, wasn't it? I mean, we knew that they were going to talk. We didn't know when, and obviously we were all thinking Thursday. But the way they dropped it on us, it started off as rumors, and God bless Casey Johnson. He was like Norma Ray. You talk about a man who was fighting the whole idea of doing it post-game because it was a big middle finger, especially to the newspaper guys. I mean, they knew that we were going to miss the first deadline. They don't care about that. They don't care about deadlines. They don't care about what other stuff was going on that night. It was just a big middle finger to, the two guys that have probably traveled the most with them over the last 3-4 years, and but they don't really, Casey called Tim Hallam, called the league, and there was just no stopping the fact that they wanted to use misdirection and then go about their way and scurry back under the refrigerator.
Yeah, Joe, it just was so, I mean, you kind of think the bullshit, even the Bears did it right. I mean, in the past when there's been trouble, but it's just so low rent to do that. And I mean, you've been around the Bulls, I've been around the Bulls a long damn time. It just strikes me as so low rent to do it that way. I mean, I know that times are tough, but that doesn't mean you do that.
No, I mean, I'd rather they have done like a teleconference where we don't have to even see him face to face. If John really had to be out of town, I mean, why not do it that way? And, there's just so many different ways they can do it, but it was so typical Bulls. And to me, it was almost the perfect ending to the season. The way they did it was, bordered on cowardly. And, I will say that at least Paxson stood there and didn't lose his cool and answered all the questions fired his way. Gar, look, he looked like a new prisoner walking into Oz. I mean, when he walked in that room, it looked like he found out his cellmate was Alabisi. I mean, he sat down and wanted nothing to do with anything that was being asked, and that reflected in his few answers that he did mumble out there.
Yeah, and your little moment there was when, after he asked Pax about Gar's job security, and he said he's safe. And here, let's give it a listen.
With Gar's job security is fine in your eyes, and secondly, a question for both of you guys: have you been told by the Reinsdorfs, either one of them, that that you brought up the word unacceptable, that this is unacceptable, and that your job security has a shelf life because of what's gone on? I mean, you only get a certain amount of coaches and a certain amount of core players, and
we haven't discussed that at all.
Not throughout the year. That hasn't been brought to either.
No, and as far as I heard, someone told me tonight there was a report that Gar's job is in jeopardy. It's not. So that just. because, I can point to, we've had one bad year. I can point to a lot of really good years where we built something from scratch.
So what's the reason for that?
So what?
Well, it's not the most, at times it's not the most comfortable job to ask about someone's livelihood while they're sitting right there staring at you with those bug eyes of his, and just, it looks like he's about to cry. But these are things that have to be asked, and if they want to do it face-to-face and bring everybody in and do it the way they did, I know Jason Goff was taking at least on social media, was taking a beating because he was not reporting that Gar Forman was gone. But look, nationally, there were a lot of stories out there that Gar Forman was gone, because people knew nationally around the NBA what this guy was doing this season, the way he was going around, and like I reported, months ago, going around on these scouting reports or their scouting trips, and washing his hands of what has transpired and putting it on John Paxson, and not because he knew he'd win the power struggle with Paxson. It was for his next job. This is what this guy is. He is a survivor. He's more interested in surviving the job than actually doing a good job. And so Goff talks to a lot of people nationally, and I know where he was getting that and where it was coming from. Mm-hmm. Locally, though, we knew that these guys are on lifetime scholarship. Until told otherwise, this is the ownership group. This is what this owner does, and they have free reign to make mistakes and make errors while everyone else is accountable. And so, nothing they did or the way they did it yesterday surprised me. It didn't. I didn't like the way they did it, but it was just so Bulls.
I don't know if you concluded what I did, but the comments about Rose told me that they know they really can't move him, and they're just going to have to try to make the best of whatever's left in this remaining year. And the comments about Butler, however, and the oblique comments about talking about leadership isn't the same as being a leader and nobody's untouchable. I think I might get my wish of a Butler trade being the real accelerant of any kind of rebuild.
Well, yeah. If they're going that full rebuild route, Jimmy Butler's gone. And I think that was a message to Jimmy Butler that you are not untouchable. You are a guy that if you don't get your attitude in shape, we will move you. And we will explore moving you either way. I think that was the message towards Jimmy Butler and what's gone on here. They invested in the coach, and that was clear yesterday because they turned their back on the last coach and did everything to sabotage his season last year. So, now they're going the complete other direction. So, when you think about it, if the guy that's going to bring your most assets back and jumpstart that rebuild would be Jimmy, and then ideally you have Derek being the selfish Derek that he is, going out and actually putting together as good a year as he can next season because he knows that payday's coming up, and then you trade him halfway through the season and add more assets to accelerate the process, because this isn't, you have two routes with this team, and the one is you stay mediocre, and the one is you blow it all up and you at least try to rebuild and start this thing over and bring in a bunch of fresh faces that you feel this coach can work with and are athletic and will fit more into what he wants to do.
I think the assets for Jimmy Butler would be worthwhile, huh, Joe? I'm just never sure what a guy is.
No, you're not going to get. Look, Jimmy is an elite two-way player, and now when you have to press, he's not an elite player. He's an elite two-way player. There's not a lot of guys that are going to do what Jimmy does on both ends of the court.
Okay.
He just is. There's a lot of value for that, and if you are going the route of there is nothing here that works, and by the time it does, Jimmy's going to be in the fourth year of this contract, so it just doesn't match up, then you go ahead and move him. But, no one knows what the plan is, and I don't know if they do. I think they want to sit down with Noah. I think Pau Gasol is gone. Gasol wants nothing to do with them. They want nothing to do with him at this point. But I think there's hope that they could salvage something with Joakim because that's where they feel like they can get that toughness again. The problem is that toughness was taken away from Joakim when you benched his ass. When his ass was benched, and then the whole fiasco of he said, and who lied and did this, that toughness was gone. And I've talked to several people that have indicated that if the best thing that happened for the Bulls, because it could have been even worse, Joakim Noah going to New York and doing his rehab there and staying away from this thing was the best thing could have happened because he would have become a locker room cancer. He had a couple veterans on his side, and I'm telling you right now, if he wouldn't have got out of town when he did, the little comments back and forth with Jimmy Butler and the little snide remarks to Jimmy Butler, Jimmy wasn't having any more of those. And you would have seen fists thrown by those two because
I had heard reports of disruptions, of some issues at some practices where Jimmy really didn't think anybody was in a position to say anything untoward in his direction because he's Jimmy Butler, and that only emboldened some guys to say, "Come on, who do you think you are here?"
Well, here's the problem. Last year, again, this stuff has just been festering for the last 2 years. Last year, when Joakim and Derrick Rose were allowed to get away with what they were allowed to get away with, being pulled out of drills, not having to work as hard, Joakim finally being convinced and somewhat even brainwashed that Tom Thibodeau isn't good for his career. Despite all the awards and all the accolades Thibodeau earned Joakim, he had enough of them courtesy of the front office. So once that settled in and you had Jimmy and Powell, look, Powell's very this is a guy that operated with Kobe and understood Kobe. He was very good at saying, you know what, Jimmy, you and I are busting our ass out here. Look at those two. Yeah. And then getting Jimmy riled up to get Jimmy that idea. So when Jimmy Butler comes into the season and declares, I'm the leader, he has a point because his mindset was, I've been paid like a leader, finally. I'm the one that works like a leader and takes these young guys and tries to work with them. And I bust my butt in practice and try to work on my game like a leader while these other two guys are getting away with whatever they want to. And so that started it. Now, once you start beating your chest that way and you have young guys behind you, you slowly have a divide. And I'm telling you, the idea that Noah would have held this thing together if he was around, this thing would have been a bigger divide and fists would have been thrown. And Jimmy Butler had about enough. He gave Joakim a couple passes with, okay, your comments, your little jokes and stuff, fine, but they're going to stop. And the shoulder injury kind of helped alleviate what could have been even a bigger problem for this team.
But yet they seem interested, Johan, bringing Joakim back. I mean, there's some interest there?
I think there's some interest with at least talking to him. But here's the problem, as you guys know, with what's going to be happening in the landscape of the NBA. The payroll is an ugly bump this year and even uglier in 2 years. And teams mandatorily have to spend, I think it's 75% this first year and then 90% of that payroll. So you're talking about, look, it's not a great free agent class. You're talking about a lot of ugly money thrown at mediocrity. And that's what you're going to see. And Joakim Noah might be swept over in that wave of just getting a contract he can't refuse. I know Noah loves Chicago. Mm-hmm. I know he loves what he's done for the city and with the charity and all that stuff. But everything has a price. And secondly, is Fred Hoiberg able to sit down with him and those two can get on common ground where Fred can say, look, I messed up. I thought it was better for the team that you work with a second unit. I didn't understand the intangibles that you brought. Can he humble himself enough where Noah says, okay, I'll give this another ride? So otherwise, you got to hope you can go out there and get the likes of Al Horford or maybe if David West opts out, if his player opts in San Antonio, if they win it. You need a dog like that to come in because it's not in this current locker room. If you can't do that, then go ahead and trade Jimmy Butler and blow it up because then you're in no man's land. So it's going to be, these two think they can fix it with Gar and Pax. We're all going to find out because this is going to be the ultimate test. Yeah,
I was just really surprised with all the talk about accountability. There's like 10 times they say accountability, and they're all fine. Everybody's fine. Fred's fine. Gar's fine. John's fine. And they say, we're accountable for that. That's on us. And I kept wondering, how is it on you? What's on you?
What's the punishment for being on you?
Yeah, if there's no penalty, it's not accountability. There's no bad part to it. You can say it. It's just nice words. It's nice cliche words. But at the end of the day, you have to feel heat. You have to feel that if we don't get this right, it costs us our livelihood. Then you're accountable. Then you feel that weight of accountability. This is just words to pacify people, and I think everyone saw right through it. I don't think there was any fan that walked away from that press conference that was on the Discovery Channel, wherever they put it, and said, wow, I'm really feeling positive about these two. They really sold me on this whole thing.
Then I was surprised that Reinsdorf felt he had to issue his own statement. Usually, when you have a press conference like this, that's it. That is the authority, and they've spoken, and that's it. And then out comes the owner.
His statements have become so irrelevant and just so. I mean, just be a man. Stop with these statements. They're just so I'm so above you guys. I don't even have to speak to you. I will have something scribed out on a piece of paper and sent your way and emailed your way, and you guys can go. I didn't even use it in my story yesterday. I used it today's story because to me it's just I don't really care what Jerry Reinsdorf has to say right now. He over the last 4 or 5 years, my experience with him is the man is a liar, and the man has tried to lie his way out of things that I knew were fact, and he knew that I knew them as facts, but he was still going to try to just overpower what I was reporting as not fact, and then finally he has to admit that it is fact. So I don't have a lot of respect for his statements or really even dignify him in my stories at this point.